We're honored to be able to share a few words tonight from the angle of a proud mom and dad. I'm sure any of you parents could get up here this evening to share something from your heart that would be equal to what we are. So we're honored on your behalf to say a word. Hopefully we do good service to you in honor of your parenting of your graduate.
Yeah, so it was 3 years into our first ministry in Portland, Oregon, that Dane was born at St. Vincent's at 6:27 a.m., 6.5 pounds. Do you guys remember those first days of your firstborn? You know, I assume you probably had no thoughts of college at that point, just like us. We were just wanting to get him home safely. That was our goal. Driving home on Sunset Highway, going 45 into 55. Derek was white-knuckled on the steering wheel, and I was in the back seat. That was my next most important spot to be, next to Dane. We wanted so much for Dane. He is born with just a little bit of a heart problem, and we wanted a strong physical heart for Dane, but we really wanted a strong heart for God. We also wanted him to know Jesus, and we wanted him to do something with that knowledge. It's really hard to believe that he is now the age I was when I gave birth to him. Where does the time go? It's crazy. So many prayer journals later, I now look at a very godly young man, and we don't even begin to think that we can take any credit for that. It's definitely by God's grace and mercy through the power of prayer, along with so many other wonderful, godly people who have influenced Dane along the way. And I know that my prayer journaling is not going to stop. I'm probably just getting started, probably having to double my efforts now. But definitely one of those prayers will be for God to yet again provide many special people in Dane's life who will love him, lead him to Jesus, continue to train him for godly leadership, ask him the hard questions, and just walk with him as he does the same thing for other people in his first ministry.
Speaking of our first ministry in Hillsboro, Oregon, we owned a home after renting for a while, and that's where Dane grew up, in this first house, and had quite a bit of grass to cut. And in the back, we inherited a clothesline that probably ran about 20 yards long. And when I had to mow, I had to go across that clothesline, and it came up to about my neck or my nose, and so I had to go down below the line to push my mower beneath it. And that's just the routine of mowing in that yard. And one time, Nell caught this on video. Little Dane at this moment, about a year and a half, about 2 feet tall or so. That clothesline's about 3 feet over his head, but he was mowing behind me about a yard with his little plastic bubble mower. Can you picture that? And his dad went to that clothesline and had to dip my head right behind me. Little Dane dipped his head. I had to watch that, so I went down and came back, and I dipped my head again because I didn't want to get clotheslined, and so went that and looked over my shoulder, and little Dane. Aren't our kids always looking for someone to imitate? By God's grace, may there be something in us that he's going to try to imitate for ministry's sake. We are fully aware, of the fingerprints on Dane's lives by many people that have been an influential role in his life as we've grown up. Across the states where we've ministered, we're not naive to the hands that God's provided to help shape Dane, and we're indebted to them. We're indebted to parental partners. Many of you in this room have played a role in helping Dane capture the image of Christ. And that's just the way it is with the Ozark family, a very purposeful, meaningful family, worth every mile to drive and every dollar to invest in. This family is worth sending our kids to. We have 2 here at this moment, and we are grateful for Ozark's influence on our son. It's an interesting fact, as we were asked to kind of share a word here, I got to thinking that Nell and I stand as graduates of Ozark right in the middle of 2 generations. Dane, in 2014, is a graduate, and 50 years before that, Nell's parents both graduated in 1964 from Ozark. We're right in the middle of that. We're grateful for this family and the influence that it has had on us, on our son. And we stand here today still trying to grow with the influence of Ozark to be a servant leader, servant-hearted, servant-minded. The word of Christ and the spirit of Christ just continues to echo in my soul. But we learned early on that we're not raising this son. Actually, this was God's child on loan to us. And so we kind of parented with loose hands. We knew as responsible stewards that we couldn't hold on him too tightly and actually allow God to provide people into his life. And we knew that God would, and he has provided surrogate parents and partners in ministry, many who are Ozark grads. We all need mature, adult leaders in our life that we can imitate, that we can follow as they mow their grass and dip their head below the clothesline. We're grateful for those whom God has placed in front of us and whom God has placed in front of Dane and whom God will continue to place in front of our children. Through the landscape of Dane's life, we see many leaders littered across the landscape, from uncles to neighbors, from pastors to coaches, from godly teachers to godly grandparents. God has been so faithful to answer our prayers on behalf of our son, providing trusted influencers to steer him and to guide him and to speak into his life, preparing him for kingdom work, for life, for marriage, for Christ. And so for these parents, it is apparent that we didn't do this alone. God's providentially provided wisdom beyond our years, wisdom beyond our experience through so many others into Dane's life. And we're proud. Aren't we proud of our kids? And yet I think we could each say we didn't do this alone. This journey has been a shared journey, multiple whispers into our kids' ears, along with the voice that we have been speaking into their heart as well. But what thrills us the most is Dane is now leaning towards a mindset of passing on what he has received. He's grown to the point of now wanting to share it to others. So may the Lord just continue to bless Ozark Christian College to produce more and more leaders that are worth imitating for our son, for future sons, for future daughters, in order to carry on Paul's words that he says at the close of his ministry to Timothy in chapter 2 of 2 Timothy, verse 2. Timothy, those things that you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust those to faithful men who will in turn pass those on to others. Now that is a legacy worth imitating, and we're grateful.